someone told me it was a revelation to me. Like a to-do list with more than three items is as a wish list, which is so true. Like if I prioritization, so it's on my wish list. It's not on my to-do list because the wish list is way too long to be actually do anything useful.
I've got the same problem.
Yeah.
If somebody asks me if I've done something, I say it's on my to-do list, which means I'll probably get to it one day.
It's a wish list, and it's horrible because I have the dilemma a lot of times with of course time management. There's too much to do. The problem and I kind of try to review why did I end up in this mess with too much to do, and it's always that. It's never that I had to do too many things. No, I wanted to do too many things.
Yeah. You've got a broad range of interests, and you're the sort of person that doesn't like to just get onto the surface of things. You like to, if you're interested in something, you like to dig deep, and when you start digging deep,
it takes time.
It can be very time consuming.
Yeah, no, so it is the art of time management is hard. Like you have to be very, I guess, if you are fortunate enough to be able to do a lot of things you want to do. A lot of people can't. They do things they have to do. I'm very fortunate. I can do things I want to do. Yeah. But it's. I'm not complaining. I'm just stating that it's a different kind of problem. Also, that you.
Well, it is. If you're so busy doing things that you have to do, or things that you hate, that's a miserable existence. But,
for sure.
I think there's something nice about having so many interests and being so passionate that you can't quite get it all done. I think it's better than. What am I going to do next? Getting bored and watching TV all the time.
Yeah, but then you combine that with another habit of mine, which is procrastination, which is sort of the same thing. I always push things to the last minute because it's that was also something I learned in a podcast. That was the one of the hallmarks of a perfectionist, which I am in certain aspects. Because I want to push it as late as possible. Because I give myself an excuse to not reach perfection. I did what I could in the time that I had left.
Yeah, that reminds me of that reading the Fire book. I did a review on that. We rewrote it and published it. And I don't know how many times I said, that's it, it's finished. I'm not going to do it anymore. Just the final review. I don't like this. I don't like it. That went on for about a year. And in the end, I said, you know what? It's never going to be right, but this will do. Let's let go of it.
But it is. I mean, it is. I think that is a sickness of its own, because you will constantly fill with it. Like firefighting. I think you have the same problem as me, with you're constantly never done in your look on how to do firefighting because there's so many variables.
And I think it's simply, Lars, is the key.
Yeah.
It's one thing to have a good picture in your mind of a concept that you're trying to express, but not always that easy to get the same picture in somebody else's head.
I don't know.
So you need to be very careful with the words you use, because we tend to assume that people know certain things, they know what I mean. So I tend to go over and over the wording. I look for simple diagrams, simple graphics. Yeah, that's a never-ending battle.
Yeah, and as soon as you think, I got a model that works here, then maybe something changed in the context. Wait, it doesn't even have to affect that model. Just in context before. So whatever you want to teach is slightly tweaked, and boom, the model is gone. It's just highly broken. No, it is.
Back to the drawing board.
Yeah, back to the drawing board. Like there's this, and I guess one of the problems with, and I want to get into some, like Be Safe and so like those kind of models. But when you're trying to, when I started as an instructor and you had these models that I wanted to teach, or thoughts, concepts, ideas, whatever you want to call it, it wasn't much of a problem. I just taught these. Again, the deeper I went into the rabbit hole, the more problematic, of course, the models became, because they were simple but useful, maybe, or wrong but useful, or But the deeper I went, the harder it was for a lot of reasons to create models.
Yes,
because you could always tweak them a little bit, and they would be useful in a slightly different way, but wrong in a different way too.
Yes. Yeah. And I think there's a balance there, isn't there, between a model that is exactly, precisely scientific correct and a model that is good enough for firefighters to get an image of what to do. Because that's why we teach, isn't it? All about giving people skills that they can utilize in seconds and minutes. We don't have 10, 15 minutes. We don't measure our decision-making time in minutes or hours. It's seconds and minutes. So whatever gets implanted there, whatever sticks in the carousel, has to be a simple model that you recognize very quickly.
Yeah, and I think that's I think one of that was one of the, I think changes I had to make, because I started to making models to understand things. And that's absolutely useful too. And you need models to understand things like how the world works and so on. But those, of course, because those weren't the most important ones, because I realized that some of my mental models I was teaching didn't have a clear connection to what the firefighter was actually supposed to do. So it was an understanding model, but it wasn't really tied to something you had to do. And then I had to really question myself: is it then really useful? If it's useful is the wrong word. Is it critical that the firefighter understands that there's no connection to what they're supposed to do?
Can it be applied? Can it be applied under stress? Can it be applied? Yeah. Because that's the bottom line. If we've got plenty of time, we can look it up on YouTube or Facebook or whatever. But we don't have that sort of time. So the models we have to be useful models that can be employed very quickly. Yeah.
I mean, and of course, I also struggle with it because I teach mainly just instructors. I've never, I mentioned some other day, like I've never done a recruit class in my life, and people go like, "What?" Like I'm not kind of that kind of instructor. I've never worked at one of the national fire schools in Sweden doing recruit training. I always do from day one. I've done on the job training for normal firefighters. I've done instructor training, and I've done, if you want to call it senior instructor training, that's all I've done ever. And to some extent, that has always been a challenge, because, the connection to the actual recruits, that would be maybe some of the students would, some of the instructors would teach in the end, that's further away. But also it was one of those challenges where I had to go, okay, now I have to really understand the instructors who teach the recruits. So it gave me a bird's eye perspective on their job. I was looking over their shoulder constantly and seeing what their problems were and trying to make it, work better. I wasn't in the gutter. I was standing on the sideline. It looks good over here. Let us look good over here. I know, but that was, so I had always had that struggle. Like, is it too complicated in the end? Because I could teach it to instructors, and they would be they would find it useful, because it improved their understanding, but maybe it wasn't useful in the next step to convey to the students.
Yes. I think the thing is, with instructors, you expect a greater depth of knowledge, not because they have to be able to pass all that on, but I'm sure you find the same thing. You've got a group of people, there's always one or two constantly asking questions that they want to dig a little bit deeper. There's 6 or 7 that are, that's good, I accept it. 2 or 3, and just keep coming, just tell me what to do. So, but I feel I really grow from the ones who challenge me, who ask me difficult questions. And because sometimes they'll ask a question about something simple, and I'm thinking, obviously I didn't describe that correctly, because to me it's a very simple concept in my mind. The fact that you're asking me that question means I didn't explain it properly. So I'm constantly striving to work out how I can choose my words so that I'm not making assumptions about what they understand.
Yeah, and I write sometimes blog articles online, and I'm always, and those are the times I really try to make my words correct. Like I have a short article in my head, and it takes probably 5 hours to get it on paper. It takes. It takes a long time. It's like you're writing a book. You twist and turn every word. And regardless of what I do, there's always 2 problems. One, misinterpretation. Like, they misunderstand what I actually say about the word, which is one problem. always there, and not their fault, not my fault. It's just we have a different view of the world that we, when we look at the words. But it's really hard to get around that because you have to explain all the words in the text without becoming too bogged down. But I struggle more almost with the latter part. Every time I say something, do something, write something, people react always to what I don't write.
You can't win, can you?
No, because if I say, it's probably good if if there's fire blowing out the window, you put a stream through it. Or if I, easier to say, if I say, if you want to put water in through a window, do it like this. Like if I only go like, this is what I'm going to talk about in this article or this,
and you've got the context in your mind.
Yeah,
you know what it is, but then somebody else, what you're saying, that has a totally different context.
Yeah, they will go on, but you can't do that all the time. You have to do this and this and this and this, or if you do it this case, God, no, but I didn't. I just said if you want to do it, this is a good way to do it.
Situation,
but it's constantly that communication is so hard, especially when you're doing it in that case over language barriers and culture barriers all over the world. It's just it's a mess.
But it's impossible to get it perfect. All you can do is set your parameters, your context, do the best you can. And then, if people have got an opportunity to ask questions and you can reply and everybody else sees it, it probably makes the whole thing clearer. But if you try to get everything right to cover every context and every culture and every whatever, you'll go mad. You'll go crazy.
It would also be a horrible article to read, for instance, because there would almost be all these disclaimers. And every sentence would have a disclaimer, only valid if you're in this country and this part of the world saying this thing. So but remember, if you do this, you have to, it would be disclaimers everywhere. So it would just be, nobody would read it in that turn. No, it is a challenge because of course, I want to be read. I wouldn't, you wouldn't write a book if you didn't want people to read it.
Get the knowledge out of it, not just read it so it was entertaining, but be left with something useful that they can employ in their lives.
Yeah. So it has to be a balance between getting it technically right, but nobody reads it, like most textbooks for fire. if you read Drysdale or James Quintier and Bjorn Carlson and Closure Fires, these are for the nerds of the nerds. Or the engineers. So firefighters won't read them, and in that sense, they become useless for firefighter training. Yeah. But they're very correct.
Yes.
So, a balance between being correct and interesting is also challenging.
I think, some firefighters try to write to impress, so they'll use big words and big phrases and quote graphs and everything else, and everyone go, wow, I don't understand the word of that. He must be so bright. But that's never been my objective. My objective is to make it as simple as I possibly can and avoid all the big words.
Yeah, it is. I would think I have the same approach to not getting bogged down in words. I mean, I always want to be correct in the sense that a scientist shouldn't say this makes no sense. But if a scientist says, oh, that's not usually how that word is being used, or this is not usually how it's framed, go like that, I can accept that if it makes my message clearer, which is I believe sometimes.
If it makes the message clearer.
Yeah,
and it doesn't always. That's the thing. That's sometimes the debates I've had about terminology. I realise that I'm wrong. I realise that what they're saying is correct and it is more scientific valid. It is more meaningful to the scientific community.
Yeah.
But it's not meaningful to firefighters, then it's got no use. So I dig in with those sorts of terms where I think, I know it's not right, but it gives a useful model and it works, so I'm going to stick with it.
Yeah, it's like one of those mental models with over-carbureted or under-carbureted. That was a good model, 15, 20, 30 years ago. Now, who's a firefighter starting today? What was a carburetor? Got zero. No idea.
You're showing your age. You know what a carburetor is.
Yeah, they go like, you have to understand watts and amps instead because people driving electric cars. Those models change also in how they're perceived and so on. I think also about culture, like the baggage. Like I don't use the term gas cooling anymore. I try to avoid it like the plague, because if I say gas cooling, people are not thinking cooling gases. They're thinking squishing bursts of water with a fog. That is gas cooling. It is not the act of cooling gases. So
it's one way of cooling gases in a certain context.
So I use the term smoke cooling, and because it's not just gases, it's smoke. But that's so it's more technically correct than cooling smoke. But the biggest reason is because I'm trying to get away from the cultural and historical baggage of making smoke cooling or gas cooling just connected to one technique.
Yeah, the center of well, it became more than just one technique. I don't think I'm guilty of it, like everybody else is. I took the knowledge from overseas and introduced it in what I thought was the context of just small compartments, pre-flashover, if you have to go inside. But what I see is that it was not interpreted that way. So, okay, I can blame everybody else. Really, it's my fault. I probably should have made it clearer. But that's where the global problem lies. We copied, a lot of countries copied the Swedish model. And we took the ABC, the window, the backdraft, the attack, the demo, and we stopped there. And everybody else in Sweden was sort of, so that's just your ABC. Now we'll take you in a really big fire, a large volume prop, light a really big fire, and see how those little goes. And it doesn't work. And we don't do that. And so I had a very frustrating experience. I won't mention where, but it was recently. And I trained this group of firefighters to instructor level. And 2 weeks later, I came back. We did a tactical relations instructors course, and I was about day 3 or day 4. We had an exercise where, we set a fan up, and we were going to safe zone, buffer zone, go into this compartment. When we got to that compartment, the objective was to fire out. So that was a trigger. The fire goes out. Okay, open this door, start the fan, and we're going to do this exercise. Well, we got to the point, it was all going well. We got to the point where I said, put the fire out. And the guy went, like, just penciling.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Put it out. I said, no, put it out. Out.
Yeah.
There was a lucky barrier there.
Yeah.
And then about 4 or 5 guys said, give me the nozzle. I had to put the fire out. And whose fault is that? Are they dumb? And the answer is no, they're not dumb. They're really very bright people. But it occurred to me that I've been training them to do that.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the tac scenarios we have, you do your door entry, you open the door, and what do you see? Flames. And you say, but put your water on them. We're on the exercise. Oh, okay. And then, the third entry, you go inside, you work your way down and say, it's the fire, put a little bit of water. Stop. And let's back out. Yeah. And so, while in my mind, it's very clearly it's an exercise to practice door entry and move up and move down.
Yeah.
They're associating with firefighting. And because we don't let the fire out, that's what happened in the next exercise. And it really astounded me. So I'm determined now that I'm never, ever going to do an attack scenario in a context where you open a door and you see flames.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen. And the last couple that I ran is we actually separated the fire, put it around a corner and said, right, your objective is this is just a technique run, which is basically a technique of moving up, moving back, and that's all we're doing.
Yeah.
We're not firefighting. So we did that, and hopefully that'll imprint a model of this is a technique. It's part of an action, not the whole action. And we've been trying to combine the technique with an extinguishing action, and we failed with both. So, back to the basics.
I think in that case, I think 99% of all instructors are doing that today, that exact thing. And I thought, just like you, I taught instructors, and most of the time I taught, like senior instructors, like those who are supposed to train their instructors going back to their fire department, like in Sweden and so on. And I thought at least they, even when I started realizing that could be a problem, like what are, can we break out something from the whole? And I thought, well, maybe not for the students, like the end result, the firefighter, but at least for the instructor, we can do that because they understand that they really understand this is the part. But they don't, because I started realizing it for myself. Like, because when you are, like we talked about, when you're stressed, this is a time limited thing, you react rather than think. It's just reaction.
You do what you've done before. Yeah. You don't remember the voice of your instructor saying, this works in this context. That never gets into your mind. It's just what you've done. Yeah. I had a similar experience many, many years ago that one of the instructors recorded from around 1999. And we had a thing, I think we had only 3 weeks with these guys, and it was great. So we overtrained them, and I thought, this is going to be the best group I've ever trained in my life. Yeah. And so they were highly experienced in the containers. They'd done a lot of attack demos. And on the last day, the grand finale was a house. We had an old timber house that we'd shifted there. We used to line it with 2 layers of gyps. And we'd light real fuel loads. Yeah. And I was just so disappointed because when they attacked the fire, they're going, there's flames rolling over their heads. And I'm saying, open up longer. More. It's just, but what do you do? You've got to blame yourself. You've got to take responsibility and say, well, and that's the lesson I've never forgotten, is that people will not do what you've told them to do. If they practice something, that's what will come back to them, as you said, under stress. So that's something we need to be aware of all the time, is make sure our models are clear as to they're a component of something. It's not the complete picture.
Yeah, but it is that, I get this, when I started thinking more about design of training fields and I started building training fields, containers, so on. That was one of my motto going in, because my philosophy became, you cannot break something up from the whole picture if it doesn't look exactly like it should. Like if you're just practicing the progression during a hallway, that can't be a fire in the end, and you just ignore it. No, it can't be. The fire has to be shielded around different core. You can't. Absolutely. If you're supposed to cool smoke and it's hot, when it's hot, you can't have cold smoke. It doesn't work, because the feedback you're getting from the thermal imager doesn't match. Like this, like you want, of course, for practical reasons, you want as an instructor to be able to say, oh, we can just do that in a propane facility with, theatrical smoke. We can do progression towards the fire. Okay, so we don't have any flows to look at thermal imager, but we'll just imagine that. We take that on the PowerPoint later. And we'll do, when they look up the thermal imager, it will look cold, but they will cool anyway, sort of. They won't get they won't get any feedback. They won't any mental slides correlating to the action. Like I'm wondering if that is not just bad training, if it's even counterproductive. Meaning it would be better if we haven't done it at all. In that case, it's on that level. Point. Because if we just a lot of times it could be super simple, like you said. If you do advancement training, if you want to do gas cooling or smoke cooling towards the fire, but you just make sure the fire is out of sight all the time. You move forward to a point, still don't see the fire, and then you move back. So now that part, if wood smoke and everything, that part could look basically good. Everything's good. You just had to have the fire further away. You needed another turn on the container.
The thing is that's what people tend to do. Is what really terrifies me is that, well, we had an exercise. I won't say where or when, but it was an exercise, and the on-shift guys are coming along. It's a big international group there, and they can demonstrate the door entry technique. So the prop they had was multi-compartment, fire up and back. Anyway, they've worked around. They found the fire compartments. They did door entry. So that far was going well. Open up the door, and before they went inside, they put the fire out.
Yeah.
Had one of the instructors. So sorry, they shouldn't have done that. And I'm thinking, well, what you do though?
Yes, they should.
Why the hell would you take 1 foot inside of a compartment with the fire until you've at least blackened down that big fire till it's a little fire?
Yeah.
So we've lost the context a lot, but
But
I think you've raised a very good point.
Yeah. No, you go ahead.
Are we better off not doing things? And I can't believe I'm saying this, but I wouldn't have said this 20 years ago. But I think that's the question we've really got to seriously ask ourselves. If we are compromising the compromise so much that we risk confusing people, maybe we need to stop and sort of say, is this better done in another way?
Yeah.
Because I think that what I'm observing over all the years is this is a major problem. You see, they do what they do. And, I think in Sweden, a lot of places there, they don't, when they do the demo where they watch the observation of the fire, some of them don't take a hose line at all.
No, it's basically never a hose line. Yeah.
Yeah. And, and I can see the benefit of that. But we've also don't have the luxury of having as many opportunities to get with the firefighters. You've got to try to cram in 3 or 4 things at once. And I think there's one model I saw where there was no water, then there's a little bit of water, and then there's people going to have a practice. And I love that approach, but it just requires more time. That's all.
Yeah, no, and I am. Now Sweden is going towards the same direction as everyone else. Do we have to do as many burns? Can we do less, and so on? So we're even if we have not had maybe the same issues, we could split it out to more burns. We will end up in the same place as everyone else in the end, at least. So we will have the same problem. It was like when I remember we were doing. So that was on-the-job training. So that was, how I started my instructor path, doing on-the-job training for my, firefighters at my station and so on. And I remember we were doing sort of, fire tax, in a container, and it's very, unregimented. We do fire tax and stuff like that in different floors. And after that, we would do our regular scheduled, by law required interior exercise training. You have to do a hot training 2 times each year. And typically in Sweden, it'd be done, you have to do a long interior search, sort of. You basically have to run through your bottle doing search inside a house. So you get that heat training. It has to be at least 70 degrees in the air of ambient temperature. So you should get good heat and everything. Which all intentions good. In practice, horrible, because what it ended up happening is that when I and many others wanted to stop, we wanted to go straight to the fire, knock it down, and ventilate. That was the goal. We don't want to go in and search for people because it was too slow. It was just slow. We wanted to reverse. You wanted to kill the fire, ventilate, and then search. If it were just one crew. But the problem was, of course, if we did that training, it ended in 2 minutes because it was so fast, and boom, knock the fire out, ventilate, and then search. There's no heat training. So what happened during a long period in Sweden, and it's still going on in Sweden, some places, you got stuck in there. This is not how we want you to do. Like I said before, we don't want you to go in and just ignore the fire, just go in and search. Don't use your tick because then it's too easy. Don't use your flashlight. It's too easy. But don't think that this is firefighting. This is not how you should do. This is just for the heat tolerance and being around in smoke and search training. And I started recognizing that was a problem. And you should definitely go into that if you want to. But also, after we started doing, so then we started experimenting. How can we still make it long? Because it has to be, by law, it has to be a whole bottle. How do you do that? I haven't figured out that you can do it 5 times instead. Just that you just accumulate the time, which would solve all the issues. You could just do it more times and better. But anyway, I was in the middle ground where I haven't figured that out yet. It's how can I make it longer? And so I started doing cellar attacks, because you can't ventilate the cellar, so that's when you have to. So we were only doing cellar attacks for years. Go that doesn't work. So then I tried to break it up. Okay, so what if we do different parts of the exercise? Going back to that, I do different parts. That we just do search. What I sort of realized that I'd rather completely separate it from anything related to what you could do firefighting wise. Like in a container, if you're doing if you have to use water in a contained, like a demo set, because you want to explain what water does and how it affects and how it looks like, you just have to like sort of I'm just thinking out loud here because I haven't gone through this, but how would you separate it as much as possible to kind of eliminate the confusion that if this was reality, you would never do it like this. If there's a fire over there, you wouldn't sit here squirting small spurts of water up above your head while the fire is just burning in front of you. Yeah. But if you sort of do, you take a different hose line, you take a garden hose line, you take this and this, you change as much as possible away from how you would think about firefighting, then it's probably easier to separate the two. Like if you do a fire behavior container and you go in with I typically only use nowadays with small bottles and you push spray cans. Now it's you're very clearly separating it towards training.
This is a series of tasks put in a form of a skill. So this is we put these 3 tasks together. Here's a skill we're going to practice. This is not a firefighting action.
No. So the more we can, it's sort of like either you make it super realistic, this is how you should actually behave, or you make it entirely different. Yeah. Like it's the middle ground where you try to get as close as possible towards what it should look like. That's why I think where we end up in a very tricky position. Because a lot of people
that's really dangerous when you think. I mean, that's really dangerous when you think about it, isn't it? Because like you said, you're putting them into this situation a couple of times a year to refresh them.
Yeah.
And you're doing something you don't want them to do. You actually want them to get to that fire, knock the sucker out, work back from there.
Yeah.
So that's, the requirement, the regulation has the right intention, but it's actually, if it forces you to do something that's not correct, it's actually counterproductive. And that's something else I've seen in many departments, is particularly with training recruits. I'll do exactly that. I'll put the fire right up the back of the very, very back room.
Yeah.
And I sent those guys in, and gas cool, search this room, search that room. And it's just so dangerous because they end up coming out thinking that I can just ignore the fire. As long as I'm gas cooling.
Yeah.
If I'm gas cooling, I'm going to be safe. Nothing can go wrong. I can just take my time.
Yeah.
And it's probably the most alarming belief that's gotten into the service that I've ever seen. And the last couple of years, I've been talking about it as the kill zone.
Yeah.
I think I might have even been with you at FDIC. I was talking Bobby Holt.
Yeah.
So we're just talking about this very concept. How do we get this message across that you can't dilly-dally? You need to get there, deal with it, and get out. And he said, you're in a kill zone. And I don't like military acronyms, but this one really, really fits. So what I've been doing is I've been teaching guys the fact that gas cooling has a very short-term, localized effect, and it's a positive effect. But how long it lasts for depends on how big the space you're in, what the stage of fire development is. And I'm trying to get a very clear separation in their brains between gas cooling, temperature, localized temperature control, and heat release rate. Now, the fire up the back couldn't care less about your gas cooling up the front. Couldn't care less. You're having zero impact on that time temperature curve. So I'm really getting back to basics of that. That's one thing I'm really pushing everywhere I go is, point A to point B, point A, as you step over that threshold, you are in the kill zone. You're not in control. You can exert some control. There's things you can do to make it safer, but you're not in control. The fire is in control.
Yeah.
Until you get to point B. Point B is the point where you can put water on the fire or close the door or separate yourself from that fire. Really simple concept, but disturbingly, I see people that have just gone away from that and have this insane belief that, hey, if I'm gas cooling, I'm safe. Nothing can go wrong.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, no, I think that I hope a lot of instructors have started on that path now to question, of course, what we were doing in Europe, for instance, for right reasons, but the wrong outcomes. I mean, in Sweden, we are, if I take myself out of the picture and just take Sweden before my time, I mean, we were doing the same thing. We were throwing firefighters into small boxes. We didn't prioritize fire. We prioritized, making your localized space safe doing gas cooling and doing search. That was the objective. Firefighting, actually putting the fire out, was sort of that was it wasn't really that hard, I think, to do. People didn't think it was hard. You just squirt water in the corner. That's the sofa. You just squirt. And because it's not hard, let's not emphasize it.
And as you said, you've got them there for a certain amount of time. They've got to do certain things. And if the first crew goes and puts a fire out in 2.5 minutes, what do you do for the other 2 hours?
It's
insane,
technical.
isn't it?
Yeah.
I was working with a prop in China, Shanghai recently. It's a hybrid prop between LPG, so they use the LPG to heat up the wood.
Yeah.
So it actually gets a carbonaceous fire. And I've seen different iterations, but this one really impressed me for a number of reasons. But the beauty of that is they had one particular space, fairly large room. You could come from above, you could come from the side, you had windows, quite a few options there.
Yeah.
It wasn't about fire behaviour, it's about actually putting a bloody fire out.
Yeah.
So you could actually get a good stack of timber in there, light it up, get it going, put it out, and then put a little bit more fuel on, crank the gas up, and it can take a little bit longer, but you'll get another real carbonaceous fire.
Yeah.
So you could easily do that 4 or 5 times in the space of an hour or so.
Yeah.
That looks really good.
I think and I started building, hybrids like that too. And but it took, I mean, first, of course, was the very simple thing of acknowledging that this is a problem. But it is a problem that at least half could be technically solved just by having a primary fire that you can ignite again, so that you don't put it out. I mean, but it went to the point. I remember I started I started in a new fire service as a part-time firefighter. I wanted to be at least connected to fire service, and I went to my first training as a part-time firefighter. So I was just there. They had no idea who I was, because in Sweden, nowadays, maybe more people know about me, but at least then, if you weren't a nerd, you wouldn't know who Lars was, because I didn't. You're never a prophet in your hometown, but also, I wasn't really interested in changing Sweden. I was more interested in learning myself and, going out and teach. But anyway, so I went into that then there was the liquid LPG container, no primary fire, just 2 gas burners, and then a liquid LPG, big rollover, the whoosh prop, the amusement park, and they made a short brief about how water works. Well, half scientifically correct, half just made up stuff. And we were supposed to do gas cooling with the fog when the rollover came. And I did first one with the fog, and then we get three attempts, like a conveyor belt. And then the second one I did with a straight stream, and I knocked not just the fire out, but also the primary, the pilot flames. And the instructor was, no,
response.
Yeah, and they were like, no, you're doing it wrong. Go like, so I put the fire out, and that was wrong. And he didn't answer because he was not in that mode. He was just, I need to fix this problem of getting it going again. And then I did another fog, and I went back. So there was no more. I'm just gonna see what happens if I actually point out that I put the fire out and how he would react.
You're ruined by exercise. Go away.
But he could have.
That's a really good point, though, isn't it? And when you get into it's a bigger space. I think it's 3 containers hollowed out, isn't it? Yeah. It's a bigger space, and it's coming at you pretty aggressively.
Yeah.
That's when you should be moving away from pulses, for starters, and moving toward straight stream. I mean, call me a heretic, but it works. And when you've seen, I've been inside the containers, when you get that angle right and you're striking that jet off the ceiling, you're producing everything. You're getting films of water, getting droplets that are 300 microns, droplets that are hanging around for 22 seconds or more.
Yeah.
It's getting a complete range.
Yeah.
And I had one post in the Netherlands, and we had this thing going, and it was an open, 2 stories, but there's a big open area. Yeah. And so the pilot drifting, and there was a beam of light coming through, pretty dark, coming through. And I was just looking at the range of droplet sizes I had over here on the left, which was quite some distance away from where they were applying the water.
Yeah.
So it just really opens your eyes when you actually start, you visualise a jet, water, ground, ladder. This is that. But when you see how it actually behaves, if you get the angle right, it's pretty effective. And look, if I had a hallway to get in, it was say 5 or 6 meters long, why would you use a fog?
No.
I mean, I'd be getting a jet, just hitting that ceiling and working the puppy right away across.
But it is. I mean, I could have bought if coming from the Swedish Fire Service, I could have definitely accepted that we didn't understand the straight stream and we taught the fog as, the go-to solution for everything. I could have accepted that sort of because, people didn't understand the straight stream. But what I've very hard to struggle with is the lack of curiosity that some of my colleagues shown in that area where they go like, it was just deemed as straight streams do not work and let's not look at it ever.
It's the thing is, and that's old too. We used to have that. Now it's finished. Here we have fog. It's better at everything. It's like saying digital radio is better than analog radio. Well, not in every case. It's like saying television is better than radio. Radio should be obsolete because of television. You've got voice and you've got vision, but this radio is still around.
Yeah, podcasting is a good thing.
So, but we have this tendency to say, well, it's a new tool.
Yeah.
Well, that replaces everything that came before it. And that was never the intention. All those tools have their strengths and their weaknesses. What's always grated on me and annoyed me is we put fog nozzles on aerial appliances.
Yeah.
Now, when do we use aerial appliances? When we've got a bloody big fire, we've got to project it a long way, and we need bucket loads of water.
Yeah.
Now, what's the best way to get bucket loads of water a very long way? It's a straight stream.
Yeah.
And, I battled for years. I ended up having a win because of CAFs. We put CAFs on a pump, and we had to have straight stream, of course, to make the best of CAFs. But I think we ended up with a dual monitor configuration. But what a battle that was.
Yeah.
So you can't straight stream on an aerial. Well, why can't you?
Why? When would you?
As soon as you open it up, you can form a straight stream with your fog, yes.
Yeah.
But not as far as a smoothbore.
Yeah.
Every couple of degrees you open it up, you just lost your projection.
Yeah.
And it's being more wind affected and wind prone. And I mean, goodness me, it just doesn't make any sense to me. But like I said, no one ever queries it. Because, if we go back when I joined the job, all of our aerials had straight stream. They're a nice tapered nozzle, smooth bore. And then along came the new generation, Dolly Champions, and they had this fog nozzle and throw other stuff in the garbage. There's no place for it anymore. It's just so bizarre how easily we narrow into what new and think it must be gold and must be glossy. All that other stuff that's just garbage. Throw it away. We don't need that anymore. Just takes over. And that was the thing with the gas fuel 3D techniques, what do you want to call it.
Yeah.
It was never meant to replace anything we're doing. It was another set of tools, another tactic, was complementary in certain contexts. And I look at how it's developed, and it's become like, listen, this is the new way. The old way didn't work. This one does.
Yeah.
Well, thinking, where on earth did that come from? And I actually went back through 3D firefighting and read my chapters and thinking, am I guilty? Am I responsible for this? But when I read through my chapters, I never said that. We always talked about it having limited to small to medium-sized compartments, certain context. But unfortunately, it was shiny, and it outshone logic and everything else. And we went off on this tangent, and hopefully we're trying to get that balance back where we one or the other. We don't have to exclusively have smoothbore or exclusively fog nails. And perhaps there's a room for both of them to live together and in the same toolbox and, be taken out when it's most appropriate.
Where do you think, because look at that, where do you think, because it was Sweden was the same, because I don't think, people came to Sweden and misinterpreted the Swedish model. I think the Swedish model was broken from the beginning in terms of where did we go wrong in saying that if we teach firefighters to operate in small environments, which is, to be fair, in Sweden and a lot of places in Europe, that was and is the norm for most firefighting.
Yes.
It is small compartments. So, I mean, yes. So, of course, that wasn't wrong. But obviously we went wrong in some sense that we didn't tell firefighters, well, again, in very clear terms, that this does only apply into small, medium-sized compartments, because that's what, I mean, Christer Gieses and Mats Rosanna, they clearly stated that this was done to handle small residential flashover type scenarios. You can control your path towards the fire if you do this. But I don't know if it was simply that, like you said, this is a new shiny tool for small compartments. We will teach it because this is new, and this has to be get into the curriculum. But we'll keep everything that's old too. But this, has to go in. But it was packaged with, of course, the understanding of fire, which was not there before. So we got two things at the same time. We got the understanding of fire, at least in small residential spaces, and we got the technique of dealing with this new understanding. So we threw in both of those things, and because we had neither of them before, it wasn't very...
Focus wasn't there, was it?
That wasn't focused.
Wasn't complete.
No.
Yeah.
It was pumping water for 15 hours instead of understanding fire.
Relay pumping.
Yeah. We're like, yeah, that was useful. Never. But I think because you threw in both of those things, and people said, "Oh, this rightfully so, recognize that understanding fire is super important," and the fog cooling sort of just came. It came in with the other stuff and said, "This is super important. Now we have to train this a lot." It kind of just pushed everything out that it wasn't really the intention, but that sort of just happened.
Yeah. And I think that if I look at my own material that I wrote in 1970, 1997, 1998, 99, it was introducing the new stuff. But it was introducing it because there was a gap.
Yeah.
If I'd had the chance to rewrite all of it, it would have fitted into that, but I didn't have that chance. And so this is the new stuff that fits in here. That it was never reincorporated. Well, it was sometime later reincorporated into. Well, here's a smooth board, here's a straight stream. It does this, it does that. Here's energy. So I think that was part of it, and it was seen to be something new and replacing everything else. But talking with Mats, he was saying that there were two other factors occurring in Sweden. Was that IKEA factor, as he calls it? The synthetic furniture, synthetic materials, and heavily increased insulation and efficiency of the buildings.
Yeah.
That we sort of glossed over. We didn't sort of take that into account. So we ended up getting this incomplete message, and there's a little bit of going to put an ego there as well. I suppose being a pioneer, there's an ego side of it. You're seen as someone that has new information. People look to you, and I think some people are going to be carried away with that and just close their minds off to everything else. And to my amazement, I've seen people that were quick to embrace the part of IBM training and 3D techniques, Lars said. And long-term CAFs. Spawn of the devil.
Yeah.
They won't entertain it. Fogner. No. And there was just like, no, we've got the perfect model here.
Yeah.
Don't try to bring anything else in. It might distract from the light shining on me. And I've never been that way. I've always been looking for new tools. Prepared to try anything at all. Not all work, of course, but I'd like to say that before I've thrown anything in the garbage bin, I've given it a pretty good run. I like to be enthusiastic, open-minded, but I find a lot of people, if you challenge that there's this core of knowledge about gas cooling or whatever, the Swedish method, whatever, that's been sitting around for about 15, 20 years outside of Sweden, and it's become a little bit insular, and it's a little bit, it's a bit of an echo chamber. Yeah. And when you tend to sort of say, well, hang on a minute, straight stream works like this, that's like you're a heretic for even suggesting that straight stream or CAFs or high pressure or Class A or anything tracks from my little bubble. could have any place in the new world of firefighting. And I have to laugh at it because it's just so silly. And what I've always tried to teach is that, look, here's gas cooling, or it's pretty good for this. Here's its strengths, but its weaknesses.
Yeah.
Here's straight stream. It's pretty good for that, but it's its weaknesses. And so and every single one of those tools had strengths and weaknesses. And there was, I'll better mention technology was a pulse gun,
Yeah.
and, it had its place, but it's never going to replace anything on a fire appliance. Good for first responses, first aid extinguisher on steroid. It was being sold as a solution to all of your problems in the world.
Yeah.
Then along came CAP, just get rid of all those big pumpers, get rid of the big crew sizes.
Yeah.
CAPS is going to solve all your problems, and it was sold as that, and it failed. And then along came a high pressure, nameless, remain nameless, ultra high pressure system was going to set the world on fire. No more big fire appliances needed.
Yeah.
Get rid of the 5-man crews. Get a 2-man with a motorcycle or a bongo van.
Yeah.
And promises all these promises. Everyone goes, wow, sign me up. And of course, it failed.
Yeah.
Now, not to say that ultra high pressure doesn't have place. I mean, there are certain situations where that tool, there's nothing on the planet that can do what that tool can do.
Yeah.
But it's probably not something that you use 95% of the time. It's 2 or 3% of the time. And when you take it out, it's going to do a better job than anything else on the planet. But, when something new comes along and you're selling it, this is better than everything else. You don't need all that stuff there. Throw it all away. Look no further. So it's a whole range of ego and marketing gotten in the way, I believe.
Yeah, and I try to understand, because I came in, I didn't have a dog in a race. I not to the same extent. I have never changed the Swedish fire service to fog, for instance, and then said, straight stream has this place too. I didn't have to retract my stuff. I have, gone out in the world teaching, fog and how I think fog worked and why you should use a fog to pieces. But I'm basically just conveying what I've been taught. So in that sense, when I start talking more about straight streams, I hate to really talk about straight stream because that's the thing. That's the same thing where you go like, oh, Lars, can you talk about the straight stream? Like, I don't think that's a very important conversation. I want to talk about firefighting over. But anyway, that's the new thing a lot of people want to talk about, and I understand it too, of course.
It becomes the center, doesn't it, Lars?
Yeah.
Fog rules. No, straight stream. You get these tools.
Yeah.
The people go into war fighting to the death over just better. And the stupid thing is, they've got different contexts.
Yeah.
One is better in one context, and one's better in the other context. But people make it the most important thing to discuss. And I mean, it's just a matter of saying, well, this is good for that, and this is good for that.
But if it is,
one of the other.
I think it became, I think, a more big problem than it was because CFBT programs took fog as the sort of the outcome of understanding fire. So you have to understand fire to sort of understand fog.
They were linked.
They were linked. So now when you said, oh, maybe you don't need fog at all if you want to simplify it, or maybe you can use fog here, it's more efficient here, and you do straight stream here more efficiently. But it became the sort of, but if we say that we were wrong about this, people will say we're wrong about everything.
Exactly.
So it was sold as a package.
Yes.
This is the Swedish packet or the fog package, the CFBT package, which I've never called it CFBT. I've never understood it, but why you call it CFBT? It's firefighting. No, it's specifically interior firefighting programs that most people run. You teach them about fire and teach them how to do it from the door and in, which is like you have a half of firefighting program. You forgot about all the things that happens on the outside.
It's half of a firefighting program, It's all of a fire behaviour program, but half of a firefighting program because we stopped there. Because if we look at my original program, it stopped there because everybody knew how to do the relay pumping, smooth, straight stream. Been doing that for 25 years.
Yeah,
and it was a mistake to separate them. because as you said, the gas cooling became linked with fire behaviour.
Yeah.
And if I have to admit that gas cooling's not the best in every situation, then I have to admit everything I've been doing for the last 25 years wrong. And I just don't see it that way.
No.
It
is not that way. Yeah.
And I mean, my courses now focus on fire behaviour.
Yeah.
The first foundation is understanding enough physics and enough chemistry, just enough.
Yeah.
Understand how fire develops, look at the variables, look at the patterns, try to recognise the patterns, and then talk about, well, we're seeing X, Y, and Z. How do you think we could deal with it? Rather than me saying, well, the best way to deal with this is to take a 38mm nozzle or a fog nozzle set on 475 litres a minute at pattern 22.5 degrees and do X, Y, and Z. I don't teach like that. I just say to them, how could you deal with this? And so it's really interesting when you start putting it back to people.
Yeah.
Sometimes they've got crazy ideas, and sometimes they've got another way I hadn't thought of that probably would work. And so we're trying to get people thinking in terms of there's more than one way to do this. There were 4 ways put up. 2 of them are probably wrong. 2 of them are probably right. There's probably another one no one's thought about that could be applied as well. So it's a matter of trying to get them to think about, this is a situation. What's the best tool for this particular situation? How can I combine that with some air tools, closing doors, smoke stoppers, opening doors, PPV, change, whatever the case may be. So to get away from thinking of one way, one tool, one tactic, one technique. And I never teach a way of firefighting. All I do is teach, listen, this is what objectives, this is what needs to be achieved. There's a couple of ways we can achieve it. And what's the best way to achieve it in Manhattan may not be the best way in Capella Bar, because different staffing, different crews, different training, different buildings for starters. So it's really getting back to the basics, sort of saying, right, here's this tool here. I love it. It's good. It works for me 80% of the time. But it's not going to work all the time. Yeah. And so therefore I have to be prepared to not take it out every single fire I go to, but stop and pause and think, hang on a minute, this big 64 I hate lugging it around, but in this case, it's the best option. So to me, it's simple. Just teach the advantages and disadvantages, and then challenge them to come up with the best combinations that will achieve that particular objective in that particular context.
Yeah, and especially for instructors, I've basically I have this philosophy these days that if they leave thinking they know everything, I failed, because they won't leave curious. Because a lot of instructors I've talked to have philosophy. They want their students to leave confident. Another word for confident is they think they sort of get it. I get this. I'm confident that this is, I understand this, I get it. Because they want them to leave confident, because they want them to go out and be, good firefighters, good instructors. They want to be forceful. They want to, do. And I remember for a long time I was questioning this philosophy, because again, if I make them leave, if I go to the other side of the scale, I make them leave so scared, and I don't know anything. They will never make a decision on the fire ground. They will just go, no, I'm not going to go in there. There's no way. No.
Just fall back to the same tool, technique and technique every time. Yeah. What can go wrong?
But if you find it the sweet middle spot where you go like, okay, I sort of have an idea what I'm supposed to do, or at least what I can do, but I don't know anything. I need to go home and study. I need to go home and read about this. I need to go home and experiment. That's what I want people to leave with. Sort of that's the main goal of everything else. Because if they leave curious, that it sort of figures out themselves. Like you said, if you arrive, and I remember when I met you the first time in Croatia, and was it 2014 or something? It was
somewhere in there.
It's probably 10 years ago. Actually,
I think it is. I think it is 2014. I was looking at it the other day.
Yeah. So I remember, because you were in your during introduction, you just go like, this is not the way. This is just a way of doing it. You can teach this in different places. We're just going to show you one. You were super clear about this. Now that wasn't that didn't it was not something I thought about then. That was part of it. But I thought about now when you said this here, you go like, I know you've been saying that for 10 years. At least 10 years. But there are many different ways. But what didn't resonated with me, or I didn't think about them, was this concept of just of course, simple concept of curiosity. Leave curious. I left that course very curious because it was so different towards what I've done in Sweden from that perspective. But I wasn't left curious in terms of how to do firefighting, because it's very, very scripted. This is how you should do, fall cooling. You should go in here. You had the fire attack sequencing, and you should do door procedure exactly like this. You should sit there. You should do this. So it was very prescriptive in that sense, at least what I perceived to be prescriptive. And I think that was where we started off, the problem of, we can say before that this is just a way, but if we show just a way and that's very prescriptive, it becomes the way.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you need a way to get started.
I think that's correct. It's a balance. Yeah. And I think if you look at the context of, my courses are generally international, and I ran one in Italy last year, and I had guys from Austria, Portugal, Italy, Germany, Greece, several countries. And so what do you do? Let's talk about something simple like door entry.
Yeah.
How do you door entry? And I tell you, everyone have a different way of doing it.
Yeah.
I could go in there and say, well, you're all wrong. This is the way it should be done. The Shan Raffel way is the best way. I've been doing this for so long. Well, you just can't do that. And so, but some people get frustrated because they expect to go to a course, be taught how to do door entry. It'd be done like, and that's not what I do. Because, we have 7 different countries there. We have 7 different content, tools, different training, different ideas, different instruction, for Pete's sake. So what I do was to say, okay, well, show me your way. We'll have a discussion about it, talk about the strengths and weaknesses. And then I say, well, let's break this down into a couple of pieces. One piece is, what do I want to achieve outside before we go inside?
Yeah.
Okay, so I draw it out of the crowd. So we want to cool the gases if they're hot. We want to cool the lightings down if they're hot. We want to control the air. Did your technique do that? Did yours do that? All right. I think that one's more efficient than yours, but yours is right. Then what do we want to achieve when we open the door? When we go through all that and we work through it. So, well, did your technique achieve that? So you end up working through a set of objectives, break them up and saying, your approach worked.
Yeah.
And then let's see all the different approaches. And, an example of how we used to do it, this is back in 97, we would paint the door. So we'd narrow down a jet.
Yeah.
Water across the door, right, to cool above the lintel.
Yeah.
Then I'd gas cool, so it had to be wide, so. And then when I went inside, I had to be a little bit narrower. So I was changing the pattern 3 times.
Yeah.
And yes, it was ridiculous. And I think a fellow called Peter Mount said, Shan, what do you think of this? And it was basically set the pattern to what you think's going to suit the height of the ceiling inside.
Yeah.
And go and push it forward a bit so that doesn't just cool gases, but it's those linings. So linings here, and achieves the outcome, and it's a lot bloody easier, and it's a lot quicker. So that's an example of how, there's many different ways. Some are more efficient than others, and some might not work so well in certain contexts.
No, I think that, we all get, and I'm, of course, guilty of that too, because I am constantly, I've gone to, wanted it very prescriptive, learning more, didn't want any rules, because everybody should be super flexible, everything should be dynamic, and going back towards, oh no, we need simple rules. But, and of course, now, being the good dictator, I, of course, are going to create new prescriptive rules that are much better
even better.
Old one, because there wasn't the problem with the prescriptive rules before. They was because there was an evil dictator doing them. No, because there is this change, of course, being you perceive yourself to have good ideas. That's every human nature. Everyone basically think that they have a good grasp of reality. There's more people there's some people who might be more open to challenge their own views, but everyone walks around thinking that what I know now is basically the truth. Otherwise, I would change. Like I don't think like, oh, I think gold is made of cheese. Like no, I can't believe that unless I believe that. So you walk around that. So now when I made basically started to switching back towards we need simple prescriptive things to have like a baseline, because a lot of things don't have to be flexible. Take your SCBA on a certain way. You don't need 15 different ways to put on your SCBA.
Yeah.
Just train one way, then you can work together, and it's easy to, so that. And then you have certain, like if you want to have a door control procedure, you teach a procedure. You say that it's a guideline, it's not a rule, but it is a guideline. Yeah. Say there's something to start off, and if you encounter
you have to have that.
Yeah. So you have, but there is a balance there. Go like, okay, so I'm not saying there's a definite answer. It's just like you constantly go with that balance, going like, am I being too prescriptive or not prescriptive enough? Too prescriptive, not prescriptive enough. Do you have like a Do you have like a gut feeling or an actual thought plan of how do I recognize if I'm making too many rules or too few rules, too few guidelines, too many guidelines?
It's difficult. I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
So I think that, my context these days, like you, is mainly training instructors and instructors from several different. Occasionally I'll do a course where they're all from one country, but that's rare. So I have to have this flexible approach to a technique, like door entry is a classic example. But I would encourage them, when they go back to Greece or Israel, Italy, for them to have looked at the different techniques they've seen and come up with a guideline.
Yeah.
I wouldn't expect them to teach it the same way I've taught it. I'd expect them to say, here's our objectives, and here's how we're going to achieve those objectives. Because they then have seen the different contexts from different countries. They've seen the pros and cons. They've seen 2 or 3 models that work. When they go back into their context, they have to be the ones to decide, well, look, I like the way the Italians are doing it. The Austrians are pretty good too, but I'm going to do something in between because of our construction or whatever.
Yeah.
So I see the need for that to exist. Once you start getting into a context where you're training your own people all the time, which I haven't done for a bloody long time.
Yeah.
I'd love to be able to just walk into the same complex and do the same curriculum with the same people every time. But once you get into that context, you do need to have guidelines. I try to keep the guidelines as basic as possible, and I try to think about objectives.
Yeah.
Rather than saying, do it this way, I'd say, you need to achieve this.
Yeah.
You need to achieve. Break a task down into simple benchmarks, simple things that they must achieve along the way. And then I'll say, here's a way of doing it. And you've got to give them one way of doing it. Got to be careful giving them 3 ways of doing it.
No.
That's the balancing act.
That's to be very clear. There has to be a very clear reason if you give them 3 ways. Not just, you can do it 3 ways, they're sort of the same. No, that doesn't make any sense. Like,
it'd be nice to think that they're able to sort of say, this building, that one would work. I'd see that with this building. It'd be nice to think that they're capable of that, but I think it's asking too much. So I think there's definitely a place for saying, this is the way we do door entry.
Yeah.
This is the way we tackle a single story dwelling. This is the way we do high-rise.
Yeah.
And I think that if you've given them a really good foundation of fire behaviour, they understand, hey, what's happening? Why is it happening? The impact of different tools, ventilation, anti-ventilation, straight stream, blah, blah, blah. Hopefully, you've given them enough information to adapt once they've started something. So once they've started an action, you've got them rolling. Things are happening. Hopefully the right things are happening. And then hopefully they've got the ability to sit back and sort of say, I don't like what I'm seeing here, and I don't like this, and try to reason why that's happening. That's the ultimate objective. And some guys will never achieve that. Let's face it.
Yeah.
There's some people that are just board officers. They're leaders. They're charismatic. You follow anyway. Others that work their way through the ranks, and you cringe every time you have to take an order from them. But so you have to. I have to believe there are some guys there that say, Shan, show me what to do.
Yeah.
I don't want to hear all the side shit. And I've had that said to me. I was give a lecture, and I thought my science was very, very, very basic. But guys sort of like, Shan, Just tell me what to do.
Yeah.
But in the same audience, there's somebody saying, well, what about this? Or what about that? What was the satellites like? They'll just come at it from different angles that you've never even comprehended. And that's what I love. I love these people that ask me, what if this happens on this day and the humidity's 75%? I'm thinking, shit, I don't know. Never thought of that.
No.
So you've got all types, and you have to try to not stifle those people and ask 1,000 questions, because they're the future. They're the ones who are curious. And they'll go on and they'll take whatever you've given them and they'll take it further. So you want to invest in it.
Yeah.
But other guys that say, Shan, just show me what to do. And that's a reality. And in between that, most guys have a level of curiosity. But they're your two extremes. So you've got to be aware of both of those. You can't turn that guy into someone who's curious, and you don't want to.
No.
Curious guy, I don't know. So that'll never happen. Yeah, don't worry about that. Even if I have to come back next day or write to them later, I'll always, try to answer their questions because they're the future.
No, I think but I guess one of the problems that happens with that too is that if we, like for instance, if we do senior instructors, like we teach other instructors, they should teach students. A lot of times, it's easy, and I've never done that because that's not been just for not up to me to decide. I've never taught a package, this is what your end delivery looks like. Now the CFBT program this is a final product we can teach. This is the end result. Now, because one, of course, obvious advantage of teaching the instructors what the end result is of course we will teach you what you will deliver in the end. This is how the door procedure will look like. This is how your training will look like. So you start with this, you start with dollhouse, you go to demo container.
It's a model of achieving those
learning outcomes. Yes, which is of course a huge benefit. Now the disadvantage of doing that is you risk having the instructors walking down the same path as the students, meaning the instructors who should be the ones who go, does this regulation or does this guideline make sense, or should we need to tweak it? They risk of just adopting it because it was handed by God and I have to just implement it. And I think that but what's happened to me was that somebody gave me a bunch of knowledge with no clear of intention of what it like a guideline could look like based on that knowledge. Like, here are lots of knowledge, just fly. I go like, I'm trying. I need a guideline. So because again,
they are important.
You have to, even for instructors, go like, but it is. I struggle with it all the time. I can't find that balance. Now, but giving enough guidelines to not be restrictive enough to make them robots, to use that terminology. I think before you go, I just asked Tim Sendelbach that, and he said one thing. We're talking about SOPs in general, and he said one thing that I think was very helpful for me, that if you have a guideline, it could be a grand SOP or it could be a door procedure, it doesn't matter to me. If you find yourself wanting to break the guideline more times that you feel it's helpful, then it's probably too descriptive or wrong.
Time to question it.
Yeah, but if you find yourself actually following it, and in retrospect finding it was a pretty good decision to follow that guideline, then it's probably adequate. It's probably detailed enough, but not too detailed. And that's, when I look at a lot of guidelines out in the world, and I look at like the UK, who's like the world championship of guidelines, and I talk, the world champ, and I talk to firefighters from UK, go like, no, we break guidelines all the time. Like, we never follow the guidelines in practice. They go like, yeah, that's a very clear example of, you have guidelines that look good on paper, doesn't work in reality. Like, to find that's a way that it was described to me, like from Tim, to go like, that's a good way to see. So I try to teach it to firefighters. Like, look at it. If you take my guideline, for instance, and you implement that, if you find yourself, your firefighters saying that this doesn't work, or it takes too much time, and they end up not doing it, it wasn't a good guideline. It wasn't helpful. It was basically, it was a pitfall. It was not a helpful. It was a,
And the world changes, Lars. What was the gospel truth 30 years ago may not be applicable today. And I'll give you 2 examples. I'll call them truisms. Of that I had with rammed down my throat was that good firefighters don't hose smoke. Well, when I came back from Sweden, I had to question that one. And that one's gone now, but it probably was true in the 1960s, 1970s.
Yeah.
The other one was good firefighters always attack from the unburnt portion. But putting water in outside is cowardly firefighting and footpath firefighting. It kills people. It spreads the fire. It's very, very, very poor firemanship. Don't ever do it. And I was teaching that up until around, I don't know, 2012, 2014, whenever the NIST did their research on transitional attack. And I said, I was wrong. I was wrong, And of course, there's caveats. There's a particular way of doing it, everything else. But all of a sudden, one of my foundations, one of my truisms, another one's been kicked out from under me because I've always thought, always attack from the unburnt. And I realised now there was, to reflect on incidents I've been to, where the one particular one at New Farm, old timber house going well, and the fire was sort of towards the front, but the best approach was, if you get from the unburnt portion, was coming in the back. That was the biggest portion. We got 1, 2, 3 key points. And I got to the room. I remember walking past, there's a 2-story, walking past and seeing flames coming out. Not for 1 microsecond. Any part of my DNA saying, gee, perhaps putting a bit of water on here might be a good idea. Not for a millisecond. And of course I got the kink points. By the time I got the hose sorted out, it rolled down the got. I realise now, had I stopped there for about 5 seconds and used that technique, I could have got all the way down that corridor and completed the search. So and look, that's the problem with scriptives. I really love what our fire service did about 15 years ago. They took it from the military, but we have incident action guides. These are guides. You've got a high-rise fire. These are the things you need to think about. These are the things you need to achieve. So it's not prescriptive, but if you do all those things, if you tick all those boxes, you've probably got everything covered. And then we have incident directives. Thou shalt do. And there's a place for thou shalt do as well. Like, for example, breathing apparatus. Thou shalt get out the control board, thou shalt do this information, etc., etc. That's a really good compromise. Whereas with SOP, standard operational procedures or guidelines, sometimes they're a mixture of both. So I really love what CFIS has done by dividing that up into incident action guides, incident direct. You shall put the handbrake on. You shall stop it. You will do all these things. And that's a better way than SOPs or SPGMs. I think it's one way of getting around that.
Yeah, I mean, there is because a lot of countries that have guidelines, they tend to end up as directives.
Yes, exactly right. That's the problem. Because you've only got guidelines, then you need to put everything in there. It's the things you need to think about, and you'll do it this way. Whereas you separate the two, you can sort of say, right, these are the things, you separate the two, and then hopefully people will make sense of what's got to be done.
No, it is. I mean, you have these unintentional consequences of everything. I mean, in Sweden, like take the transitional attack, it was in Sweden, of course, like every other country, we have had the experience of being pushed, like if you take the fire service out, being pushed fire at because of incorrect stream placement from outside. Probably a fog, you pushed it in, you create an overpressure, or something else causing that we, wind-driven fire that we didn't recognize and so on. But so it was always been a caution. If there's firefighters inside, shouldn't you spray water from the outside. But Sweden, it was never like sort of if there wasn't a directive that said thou shalt not. It was equally in part of, okay, let's all firefighter training start from the front door and in. We basically don't train how to start an incident, and for sure it always ends up us standing at the front door and going interior, because that's what the hardest thing. That was the shining light since the 80s. That we are interior firefighters. That's our that's what we do. So we had it, which of course the unintended consequences, which was really an unintended consequence, was firefighters didn't put water in from the outside. Maybe it was because someone, in the end, because we don't want to push it to firefighters, but simply because we never train on it. So if you never train on it, people are not going to do it.
Yeah.
So we will save that fire for later when we get around the building and come from the inside. And sometimes for no particular reason. And if only the fire training was made that, okay, we will start 15 meters from the house, and now we will make a decision if we're going to put water on the window or not. Yeah. If that was just part of all training, it would at least be a conscious choice not to put water on it if that was an issue. But it was never a conscious choice. It was never a conscious choice.
I disagree with Steve and the team a little bit about you can't push fire.
Oh, yeah, me too.
You can for a little while.
Yes.
And I've got video. That proves that we had a high-rise fire at my home city of Brisbane, and the fog pattern was put in through a big window. It had just broken.
Yeah.
It was heavily hot. And you could see it went in, and it went round and round and round, and it came out in the balcony. Yeah. And this guy's walked out about 2 milliseconds before it's come out like a blowtorch. Yeah. So, but then the context is important, because when I was doing my officer training, one of my officers, went into a big, actually wool store. Not many of them left now, they all burnt down. But we went into a wool store and we put an Elkhart L200 on a power cone.
Yeah.
And he got us to stand at the door. And the amount of air being drawn in was mind-blowing. Yeah. And I forgot it. So here's the difference, is that if you're thinking about using a fog nozzle through that opening, bad, and you probably will kill people and make things worse. But then they were the first ones to sort of do all that water mapping, and they took it right back to a perspective that we should have had, but we didn't have.
Yeah.
Let's just look, and they did some incredible work, water mapping, and just mind-blowing stuff before they had the conclusions. But once you see, that technique, the top third, just slowly across there, if you degenerate steam, it get out through there, it doesn't push things. I'm thinking, it's a no-brainer. So there's a few caveats with it, but once you understand the complete package, it was probably one of the biggest things in my career that changed. All of a sudden now, it wasn't cowardly, it wasn't weak, it wasn't stupid, and it wasn't killing people most of all, because we believe we're going to kill people. All of a sudden, we now know that if we do it properly, we are improving conditions everywhere for everybody in that building. That's what the research shows. So that was a mammoth change for me from one of the old truisms. So I'm sort of
for me too.
A little bit scared of rules of thumb or truisms or whatever else, because they may be true today.
Yeah.
But 10, 15 years time, the built environment changes, equipment changes, scientific knowledge increases. So I'd like to have guidelines, not minimal directives.
No, and that it's a constant balance, and I think that just simple things. You mentioned UL and they're not pushing fire. I mean, in that case, I think it's just a word. They meant you can't push sustained fire. Yeah. Meaning you won't have a fire in the kitchen and you put a fog in and now you have fire in the
one at the other building.
You will have a sudden pressure being pushed, and that could be flames igniting and so on. The amount of even if it's done incorrectly, the risk of someone getting injured is fairly low, but we know from experience that some firefighters have got hurt.
I've been in the receiving end of a monitor, actually.
Yeah.
So fire.
Yeah. So then we know that it could be an issue and so on. But just the wording there, and that simple wording made a lot of people, at least in the early days, a lot of people just scrapped that entire information from UL altogether. They would go like, but they say you can't push fire. I've seen people push fire. I've been on the receiving end of being pushed fire. Yeah, everything they just said now is bullshit. And I think that's not the difference toward any other instructor if you have a dogmatic approach.
Yeah.
If you
and that's the thing, Lars. You said before, like, choosing your words is so careful.
Yeah.
Because it's very clear what they meant, and I think I knew what they meant as well. You're not going to push the stain fire, you're not going to spread it from one end of the building to the other. But because I said you can't push fire, people have had experiences that I don't accept that. And I think there were some people that didn't want to accept a lot of other stuff
that
had been discovered about the ventilation, and it was just like another one. You're all wrong.
Yeah, no,
I've
it was easy.
experienced
It was
this.
an easy out
So-
for people who didn't want to pick on the other thing. You know, like if one thing is wrong, you know, I can say that everything is wrong.
We're all flawed.
Yeah. And again, like I think that I try not. I mean, we all fail, of course, but I try not to sound dogmatic. But if I say I believe this to be correct, some people will interpret that as this is correct because of how I maybe incorrectly say it in terms of body language and so on, but also because maybe some people just trust me that much that they will say this is probably true. So I run the risk of always having the outcome being, oh, this is now the new truth, even if that was not intended.
Yeah.
And I've balanced myself. Like I can't like the easiest way for me not to say anything stupid is, of course, not to say anything at all.
Yeah.
Like I don't, you know, the easiest way for me to not get criticized or people misinterpreting myself is to never write anything on social media.
Yeah.
And I thought that many times.
Courage.
I asked, not just courage, it takes some level of, I do not take full ownership of what other people think I say. I can't take full ownership. Now, I've had criticism from people in CFBT community. Oh, you know, people misinterpret what you say. You should be more clear in what you say. Then I can't say anything. Like I decided, and I just asked my wife just yesterday. I asked, do you think I can quit social media? In the point of, do you think you can still work as an instructor if you quit social media altogether? Do you think you can get any teaching job? I mean, this is what I do, and you know, like people, if nobody's ever heard of me, they won't call me and say, "Hey, Lars, do you know you come teach?" So I thought, do you think I can teach? And she said, like, no, I don't think you can like quit, because I was just yesterday, you know, I wrote an article just a week ago about, you know, heat release rate and that there was not a clear connection towards how much cooling capacity you need, like heat release versus.
Yes, I saw that. It's a great article.
Yeah, yes. and I saw it spiraled away in different forms. I got a lot of personal, because most people don't want to comment online. But they send personal messages because I guess one part of it is they don't want to get into the debate. They don't want the risk of seeing them asking. There's a lot of things that, you know.
Or they frighten them up wrong.
Yeah, they might frighten them might be wrong and so on. But a lot of people just go like, no, I don't want the morons to comment on my post. That's basically what it goes at. Go like, so I have to, when I see it spiral out of control, I go like, how much do I have the obligation in that sense to jump all the shared articles, all the places ever, and start, you know, having a debate about what things said? And go, and I took, no, I can't. I won't do that, because if I were to do that, I wouldn't write anything.
You know, if you take 100 people, 100 firefighters anywhere in the world, and you put a message out, there's a percentage that it'll come in one ear and go out the other, and it'll be absolutely meaningless to them. There'll be some that'll get most of it right and have some questions. Some of them will get it totally wrong. And you just can't avoid that. That's just the way our brains work, and we're all influenced by our context and our upbringing and our experience and our culture. So it's absolutely impossible, Lars. You know, and like I said, if you tried to make it so perfect that everyone understood it, you're probably going to be unreadable. Yeah. So I think, you know, I remember the first article I wrote about 99. It was. I was terrified. I was absolutely shit scared, because I putting all this stuff out there. I'm just a baggy ass station officer, and this is going to into Australian Journal. I'm thinking I'm going to get ripped up the bum paper. It's going to be horrible. I tell you what, I was amazed how few people had anything negative to say, and that's sort of been my experience mostly when you put something out there. Yeah. You do your best to make it accurate, and sometimes it'll misinterpret it. But I think that if you do that and you're confident in what you're saying is correct, then have the right attitude and say, look, see what you're saying, but here's the context. And then be man enough to sort of say, if they point out something you didn't understand, then you're a winner as well, aren't you? Even if somebody tells you, hey, Shan, you said X, Y, and Z, I know what you meant, but you're wrong. Yeah. Aren't they doing you a favour? Because hopefully you're going to correct it. it takes a lot of courage to have someone tell you wrong.
Yeah.
Look, I'm never frightened of honest critique. I value it very, very highly. But I think if you get on the internet, on Facebook, there's a lot of shall we say non-valuable critique. It's I avoid Facebook like the plague. Facebook debates, post stuff and just use it for information and stuff.
Yeah.
I don't get involved in these smooth bore versus fog debates, high flow versus low flow.
Yeah.
What was this about? Flashover backdraft?
No.
Because it did deteriorate into an absolute shit fight where people, you can almost see them, across their monitors wanting to punch them out, saying, "You're wrong, I'm right." Yeah. And it's just not what it's about, is it? It's about, hey, I think this is correct. Do you agree with me? And if you don't, well, tell me why, because I want to know why. But unfortunately, that's something that's not alive and well on post. It's like, I'm right, you're wrong.
I don't know if like you, I started. I know you were out debating online and writing stuff, commenting, and of course I started doing that too. And it was really fun to start with. Going back to it, it's a bit embarrassing to see your progression, but both in conduct and in actual content. But taking a step back, I started, I don't debate anything at all anymore. I'm not, and I basically stopped reading too, which is I follow some groups sporadically to see, am I missing something of importance? No, like there's different cultures around. I try to be sort of a foot in all the cultures. Some in the CFBT community, some IFIW, like that community is the scientific CFBT, some in the American culture, some a little bit in the UK and so on. I tried to follow different groups and see, get a rough sense of where things are heading. But I never engage in anything.
It's just a waste of time because people, there are some people, I suppose, who read sort of, okay, Shan, I get where you're coming from. There are other people that will just attack you and sort of say, you're wrong. And it's not about getting it right. It's about being right. I can't have him being right because it'll make me look worse. And that's what I don't like. It's this ego-driven stuff that I can't be wrong. If you don't agree with me, you must be a fool or worse. When it deteriorates to that, I don't want to know about it. And I look, here's my opinion. This is what I think. Yeah. I'm interested to see what people say. If it's honest critique and it's edifying, great. If it's not, but generally it's not. So I try to minimize that as much as possible.
Yeah, it is, and I know why, but it is. If you get 10 comments saying that, oh, that was useful, that was inspiring, or even constructive feedback saying that like you could have gotten this part better, like that. If there's just one who goes, that's a load of horse crap, you're a fucking moron, especially if they write, I find it for me, especially if they write it in third person. So let's say someone shares it on their page and they write to a friend, look at this idiot over here. And they're writing in third person. So they're not writing it to me, they're writing it to their friend. So they're basically like sitting in the office and I'm basically the equivalent. I'm just passing by and I accidentally heard, Lars, what he wrote on the Facebook? He's a fucking moron. Doesn't he understand that, XYZ is, and I go, because I get angry and I get sad for people talking shit about me behind my back, even if it's open. They sort of don't realize that it's sometimes it is open. But two, I get so mad because I want to respond, because if I don't respond, I picture myself as condoning it, sort of valid point there, sir. Like that's a valid point. I won't even argue with that. So I get mad by myself because I get emotionally sad or annoyed. I want to comment, but I don't want to comment, by the way, because I know it's a fruitless discussion. At best, I will win one heart and one mind, and I will die myself trying. But it is really hard. So that's why I'm like, I try to not even, I read things that are on my page. If I post something, I read it, not always comment on it, but I never now look at, I try really hard never to look at things I shared, never go there, never look at it, because whatever I will find I will pick out the one piece that is negative, and that will haunt me for 2 days.
Thing is, Lars, I don't let it bother me anymore. My skin's gotten a bit thicker, and I learned very young that it doesn't matter who you are. If it's 100 people, not 100% going to like you. There's some that just going to not like, for whatever reason, who knows what. You're never going to win 100%. And I've got a feeling that, and I've seen some of these comments about you and other colleagues, and I look at the person saying it, and they've got a little fan club, and the mates go, yeah, he's an idiot, click, 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 like. Well, I kind of think, I just think they're a dickhead. Personally, for wording it that way, there's a way to say, Lars, I totally disagree with you. And here's what there's intelligent debate, and there's just being a dirtbag. And dirtbags are dirtbags, mate. You will never turn them around. They'll never change your opinion. And I've got a feeling everyone, even the ones that go like, realise this bloke's a dirtbag. So I think their history follows them, and their credibility is usually pretty low. People that act like that and talk like that usually have a low credibility level, so I don't worry about them.
Yeah. No, it is. And I've also like to go back to now. This is kind of sort of like a psychology session here. That wasn't intended, but like I'm going. It's important. It's super, because I know, because I've made the error both online and in real life to say things about other people that I regret. For instance, it might be also just poor wording. So I might say what this person said was bullshit, and people will relay this as he said you are bullshit, or I said this was a dickhead behavior, and other people will say that person was a dickhead.
You're a dickhead. Yeah.
And those kind of things, and and I felt very guilty about those, because I know that wording is important, but that you have to give some buffer towards. You have to be extra nice to give a layer
and context.
Yeah, and you have to get that. And so I've learned that the hard way, but also it just adds another one. So if I'm going to respond, everything should be correct, but I'm also going to be overly nice, because I don't want people to go around thinking that I'm not a nice person. Yeah. So you have to treat people you don't think are nice. And that's not sort of how I think Superman was right. Like, I think you should be, no, it's in Sweden. You should be hard against hard people. You should be kind towards kind people. I don't think you should be kind against hard people. I don't buy the Jesus turn the other cheek way. Like, no, fuck.
I'd love to be able to do that, but I find it very hard.
Bullies should be bullied. Like, they should be stopped. So I end up not commenting at all. Or at least that's sort of that's the least worst option for me right now. And sometimes I don't respond because I don't have time and so on. So, now some people are going to say, oh, he didn't respond to my comment, so I think I'm an asshole. No. Maybe I just don't see it.
It can be so time consuming. Yeah. Even if you've got somebody that you think, look, if I sit down here for half an hour and put my case out, I think they'll probably change their mind. Yeah. And you do that every time you get somebody that says not enough hours a day for starters, even the ones you can't convince, and they're like about 10%. Yeah. 90% just, they don't want to. They've made their minds up that they're just going the way they want to go. And like the internet, massive echo chamber. If you believe the world is flat, and there's a serious group out there, flat worlders. Yeah. And it's fantastic. You should sit down and read it, because they'll have links to Professor such and such, and they'll have arguments. Just total bullshit. But it's just the way they worded it. It's almost convincing, and obviously they're believing it all. And if you log onto it and you're not open minded, then it's flat. So this is an extreme example of what's out there. But I think that COVID-19 vaccinations, that's another great example. If you believe that vaccines are going to kill you, well, there's tons of evidence for it. Evidence, hard, irrefutable evidence. And then if you don't believe that, what you'll find is tons of rock hard evidence. You can't justify basically any position you have. That's it's of course with fire, but it is. I mean, at some point. So I try to avoid the toxicity of social media, but still,
it is my primary reason for sort of thinking, for sort of gauging, am I still being on track? Look, what is the general, lay of the land when it comes to people arguing in America about smoothbore versus straight stream? Do I understand what the different arguments are, so that, that there's not new information coming along and I'm still sitting in my camp trying to go like, oh, but these person, I've only listened to them, so I'm not going to listen anymore. So I still want to dip my feet in that waters all the time, different camps, of seeing, do I still think my worldview makes sense? Because
it's a healthy to question your current view, and it is a great source of information. I think if you look at what's out there, look, the fact is, I don't know how much of it's BS. Depends what the group is, but you have to realise that out of every group, there's probably going to be nuggets of gold in there, and the rest is going to be BS. And if you're prepared to ignore the BS, you're going to find those nuggets from there. So I think it's still a very valuable platform. I use it mainly for posting, informing people, and people direct message me and ask questions. So I think it's a great tool, but you just got to be careful about getting drawn into debates, particularly about the same debates coming up again and again. I used to watch these same people saying the same thing on both sides. Yeah. And what they're trying to do is convince that maybe there's a couple hundred people that are reading them to think, he's right, no, he's right. They're all trying to convince them that they're right. Yeah. And I'm thinking that's a losing equation. Just not worth going. I tell you what's been really surprising to me is WhatsApp. Okay. A young fellow from Ghana made contact with me several years ago, and he said, let's set up a forum on WhatsApp. And okay, not going to work. But it's I absolutely love it. Okay. And there's a couple of groups that are, one from Ghana is mind-blowingly active. Yeah. There's 20, 30 posts today, and this guy's posting questions. Yeah. From the therapy education exams. How many describe a horse and rope, describe a top belay, blah blah blah. Yeah. No educational, and you can put files on there. You can video. You can put clips on there. It's you share multimedia, and you get these discussions, and it's more civilized because it's a closed group. Yeah. You've got to get invited into the group. You know who everybody is. Whereas Facebook can sort of become a bit of a wild card. You don't know who's listening in or where they're from or what their real identity is. So that's been an interesting forum that's quite impressed me. But LinkedIn can be quite good as well. But I think it's important to keep looking at those forums, and I do that from time to time. I just don't get drawn into debates anymore.
Yeah, no, and I, like you said, if it's open, it's more likely to be. But it is, all these closed groups tend to be. If you just read one type of closed group, you will go down into a rabbit hole of it is an echo chamber. You would have the standard people in every group who goes fuck yeah on the things they agree on, and they will crowd out every dissent. Like, so there's not any incentives to be the guy who goes in to go like, oh, well, have you really considered this? Because they will just post memes and fuck yeah, we're badass slayer dragons, whatever the topic is. You always have those. So it is really hard. But again, it is this call. I always feel guilty about me being misinterpreted, or just topics that I find more passionate about not being understood the way I think they are works. So I'm sitting there, and for every Facebook post I've probably made in the last 5 years, I've probably written 5 times more, which I've deleted, because you write something and you go like this, like this will, at least there's always something you can point on and post. This will be misinterpreted, or this will be, and then you expand on it, and then all of a sudden it's an article, and you go like, this is not sustainable.
Becomes more of a piece.
Just delete it.
It's on for young and old. It's also a cultural thing too, isn't it? In Australia, if I've got a new hairstyle, and I say to Lars, and what do you think of a new hairstyle? Yeah, if they think it sucks, they'll say, yeah, it's all right, shit. Yeah. If you do that in the Netherlands, they'll say, It's hopeless. I hate it. Don't like it at all. They're honest. We tend to be dishonest because we don't hurt people's feelings. The Dutch tend to be very direct, and it's not to hurt feelings. It's, well, you asked me what I think of your shirt or your hairdo or what you are, and I gave you an honest opinion. So there's a cultural divide there too about how we comment.
I just I sent a podcast to James Mendoza, and he said, and I asked for his opinion about what I said and so on, and he said, well, I think you did a good job and everything. And I actually replied after, would you tell me otherwise? Because it is, because even if you're friends, you don't want to hurt people's feelings, and giving feedback is I don't give feedback anymore. I've lost. For me, it's lost unless I really know that they actually will appreciate it and they actually want to hear it, which is rare.
If they've asked for it,
But even if they ask for it, I never give honest. I never give honest reviews, basically anymore. And the reason why is simply most people do not want honest reviews, and to be fair, I'm not sitting here throwing stones in glass houses. Nobody ever in the history of the world wants to be wrong.
It's human nature. Let's face it. We all want to be right. But I've got 3 or 4 people that I know if I ask them, if I see them work, they're going to give me an honest opinion. And it'll be blunt. It won't be rude. Well, I won't take it as being rude. I'm one of the few people that can take blunt, honest criticism. Because the objective of me seeking that feedback, particularly with something that I've written, is if they see something that looks obviously wrong, they're helping me to correct it.
Yeah.
Because if I put that out to the public, there's going to be several hundred people will see that and say, this is bloody hate. Yeah. So they're really doing you a favour, So, but it's very hard to get. I've done that a lot over the years. I send work out to people and feedback and. Couple of weeks later, what do you think? Yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
The mates, they didn't read it. Perfect.
Yeah.
Or it's a packet of pooting, and they don't want to tell me. Not really useful, is it?
No, it isn't. I mean, I remember, wanting, like you said, I think for comedians, before I go back, like how comedians work, they typically, they have some new material and they started at a small club somewhere, local club, and they try new materials. And if that sort of works, they slowly build into, and then they do their Netflix special. So the Netflix special is just, 1% of 1% of the actual content they've tried to make. It's, it's the best pieces. Like for a fire instructor, maybe you can go, if you go to, the problem is you go to a recruit and they don't know anything. So you can tell them anything and they will just go, yes, that makes sense.
Yep.
I have zero possibility. So most instructors have no sense of getting honest feedback, because in practical sense, most fire instructors not even look at their colleagues, because if you work on a school, someone is going to do a class on this, you're going to do a class on that. You don't look at each other. You don't hear what they say. No, and there's often no time to do workshops where you actually see. So those inaccuracies or, way of presenting, they could just multiply for years without anyone actually looking at it. So when you get into senior instructor development, that's really the first time where you have someone on the other end who has any possibility of giving you feedback. But then if you go to a different country and people go oh, Shan Raffel, he's an icon. They're not going to sit there, hey, I'm a fire instructor from Italy, going, hey, Sean, I think, you got a lot of smoke up your ass. They're just going to go, oh, Shan, said a lot of good things. Some things I didn't agree with. I'm not going to tell him, of course, because that would be rude, or, I wouldn't present, or even I'm too insecure to sort of, I think it's wrong, but I don't want to, put myself out.
Understanding it out.
Yeah. So it's really
I always encourage those students. Well, you're right, because in one context, you've got the recruits who won't question you.
Yeah.
In the other context, you've got people that are too polite
too polite.
You, or would feel embarrassed to challenge you. Yeah.
So, I mean, how do you get feedback? And you have those, I mean, like you said, you may have some individuals where I'm going to get good feedback because they know the subject well enough, they know you well enough to dare offending you, basically.
Yeah.
And they might even actually think that you are more scared of being wrong to everybody else, so that you actually appreciate being wrong now.
Yep.
But that is not, I have for myself very hard time to forming those kind of relationships or those kind of places. So at least one of the things, again, with social media, I post something out there and someone shares it and they tell their friend, that might be the only time I get real feedback. That I know it's not because they're not sugarcoating it to me, because they're telling my friend what an asshole I am. Now, if there's no subject there, if they're basically just misunderstanding, or maybe they don't even know enough to understand what I'm saying, and sort of, I might go like, yeah, that's criticism, but I don't care. But to get it from knowledgeable people, it's so hard.
Once again, it's a cultural thing as well. And I always try to encourage people to say, listen, there's no dumb questions. If you've got a question, the odds are somebody else at the table is thinking the same thing. And you're not just doing yourself a favour, you're doing them a favour. So I always encourage that feedback. But Poland is an interesting example. So I've done quite a bit of training with Poland, and their senior officers, they come in at a higher level. They're university educated.
Yeah.
And I remember giving presentation to them, and they didn't hesitate to challenge me. Flat out said, no, that's not right. That's totally incorrect. And then we'd have a discussion. It wasn't rude. It wasn't aggressive. It was just stating, I believe that's not correct. And we'd have debates backwards and forwards. I won most of them, surprisingly enough. And then sometimes you have to go away and say, look, let me think about that, or I'd reference a book.
Yeah.
But I love the fact that they didn't hesitate to challenge me.
Yeah.
And it's not done in a confrontational way.
No.
But some people would be offended. But I don't have that problem, because if people honestly are challenging me because they challenge my knowledge, then I've got a problem. What I have a problem with people challenging because they don't like me, or they want to see me fail or fall.
Yeah.
I think anyone can cop that, but I actually encourage people to speak up and challenge me, because that's how I continue to grow. Because, you said you try to get onto the forums and check your knowledge, see if you're up to date. You read books, you read articles, you need magazines, it's a podcast. Another way, as an instructor, is when people challenge you.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
And say, I don't think that's correct. I don't think that's right. And sometimes it really gets you thinking about what you're saying. And then sometimes you've got to go away and do some more research and come back.
Yeah.
So that's an incredible growth opportunity, the way I see it, because they're always keeping me honest.
Yeah, and it's I try to. I'm a very good instructor. I know that, and one of the reasons I'm a good instructor is I'm very good at creating the logical hoops I need to go through to get to a conclusion. But I know I'm so good at doing that I can easily make someone believe the wrong thing. Like I said, I've gone through America to convince straight stream advocates to use a fog using logical hoops. Very built. They couldn't punch a hole through it, so they go like, "Oh fuck, Lars got to be right." Doesn't mean it was right. It just means that the arguments I had was so well constructed that they led to a faulty conclusion. So I
think it comes back to motive, doesn't it? I mean, I've known you for quite some time now, and I know that your motive is to pass on information, accurate information. That's your motive. Some people, that's not their motive. Their motive is the next gig or the pay rise or impressing people or the next opportunity to train. They're the ones that are dangerous. You have the genuine desire to pass on knowledge as good as you possibly can in the time frame you've got. And so I don't think you need to worry too much about that, because the motivation.
But I have to worry about it. It's still possible, even if I could construct from good meaning. I believe I fight in the good fight for the right reasons. But even if I have the good, I'm still possible for me to, because I want people to understand something, to construct a well-made argument to some faulty conclusions that I just think is right. So it's very hard, again, to get feedback. If I'm such a good instructor, I'm not saying I'm perfect, it's not what I mean, but if I am such a good instructor that I build that good argument, the audience will not be able to challenge it because it's well constructed, especially if you do recruits or maybe junior instructors, because they're so unknowledgeable, they will easily fall into whatever trap I tell them to go into. Now, of course, if you are manipulative, you would do the same thing, but you would do it with an outcome it's not for the benefit of the student.
You would be very evil. It's a power.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And when it's used in a positive way, it's a great gift. But oh boy, it's been used through history for the exact opposite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but it isn't going back, because it is hard that if you are good, you will naturally be good at constructing those logical hoops to keep people from being able to poke a hole in it. Because the whole thing, what you're doing as an instructor, you're iterating. The better I tell this story about this concept, the less questions I will get. Eventually, I will be so good at telling the story, I will never get questions because I've preempted every question I get. I've created the perfect argument. It doesn't mean it's true. It's just a perfect argument.
That's the best you can achieve, though, isn't it? And I love the fact that you're always questioning yourself, questioning what you're training, the way you're training. So many things. That's really very helpful, and something unfortunately we don't see a lot. People get into a comfort zone, especially once you become an expert in a subject. It's very easy to say, right, well, I'll just take the same material every time I go and do training all the time. I never have to change. I don't have to think, I don't have to use my brains. That's dangerous ground. It's to constantly be challenging. Am I relevant? Has the context changed? Have I drifted off? Because, dears, as human beings, we all have biases. There's nobody that says they can say they don't have biases. I mean, I like to think that I'm aware that I have biases sometimes, but I think there's something we have to battle with all the time. Otherwise, we end up in a big echo chamber. And when we do our searches on vaccines, we find exactly what I'm looking for. The other person finds exactly the opposite. You're always got to question your reality.
Yeah, I mean, if you can never know what your biases are until you assume that the biases you think are true are actually false. So if you do, I mean, like the true science, which there's surprisingly little, is really, I think this is right. I'm going to try my very, very best to prove it's wrong.
Try to break it.
I would try to break it. I think the most true form of science. You have a hypothesis and you really try to break it. Now that's not most science. Most science is, I think this is right. I will see if I can find some evidence for it being right. That is most science, what it is, because it's very hard to get money for science that you want to disprove.
Yeah,
it's just the nature of how it works. So a lot of science is not real, real science. It's just good science at best.
Yeah, there's a dilemma there, isn't there? Because the true scientist puts forward something they honestly believe in.
Yeah,
but then they try their best
they really try to break it.
Or anything that can break it. But as you said, that's not very commercially attractive.
No, if the stake is too high, I mean, I call it, because when I started instructing, and especially when I started instructing more outside of Sweden, there's a sense of responsibility of being right. It's not about me being right, but I want to be right because, of course, I have a responsibility. People listen to me, for good or bad.
That's right.
The people listen to me. So I you have to have this, but it's really hard to go around challenging everything you believe all the time. Like it's not very practical. Like you go around and go like, oh, is this road gonna fall down? Is did the engineer who built this bridge and was a good engineer? Do I have to second guess? Like it's really hard. Even if you go to to firefighting, go like, okay, I have this dollhouse. I've used this dollhouse in this way many times. To really sit down and go like, okay, what are all the potential unthoughtful, unintended consequences, inaccuracy, intended consequences of using this dollhouse, and just start ripping it apart and go like, yeah, I find a lot of hard, possibly, disturbing things here. Should I correct them? It will require me to rebuild the way I teach or use the model. Now, I want to hear your thoughts on it also, because I know you talked about it. But one of the things I do to get around this is connected to curiosity also, because I generally don't do dollhouse demos, for instance. I take a dollhouse and I give it to the students and I tell them, try to make this.
Do this, do that.
Do this, because I want to spark curiosity. I want them to play. I think that they're so valuable. Even if I don't reach the same amount of learning outcomes, for instance, I think the value is way more still.
They're discovering.
They're discovering. They're playing. Yeah.
If I'm talking to you and telling it, becoming in here and going out there.
Yeah.
But if you are discovering, it is in there. You have discovered it for yourself. So powerful.
But that is also one way of staying, I think, humble. If you have that approach to most things you're trying to teach, I'm not saying at all that I'm throwing stones in glass houses here. But if you try to have that approach to most things you're teaching, you go like, okay, like you told, I have this thought about how the world works, and I put people try to basically play around it and break it. And me as an instructor, I'm the facilitator of that sort of debate on the level that is appropriate. For students, new recruits is one level. For high experienced instructors is one level. But the philosophy is the same. They have to fiddle around and play with and they might come up with an answer that you didn't expect. Like, we think the world works like this because we played with the model. And you go like, that doesn't make any sense.
And the longer you've held a belief, and the if it's a belief or something that you've created yourself, you have some ownership of, the harder it is to admit you're wrong. I mean, if it's an idea that you'd be promoting as somebody else's and it's probably wrong, it's a little bit easier to let go of it. But so there's a lot of challenges there. I think if you've got the right intentions, if your intentions are to pass on knowledge, then you're motivated to make sure it's accurate. And then, but you've got to keep questioning yourself and looking at what other people are doing as well. I mean, that YouTube is just colossal for that.
Oh.
I mean, I just love what's happening with YouTube. The Doll's House is a great example.
Yeah.
I do a really simple scenario, and I've seen guys doing unbelievable things. They're taking it to the next level.
Yeah.
So with the Americans, they had in a basement, of course, they had an attic. Yeah. They had a roof in the ceiling.
Yeah.
It was brilliant. But what they did was just the next level. So being curious about what other people are doing, and you can still learn a lot from them.
Yeah, and I mean, even if I went to Poland too and did an instructor's course, and I like to think of them as workshops more, but it was on paper it was a course, and they asked me, I want to do an open fire container, and I said to them, look, I don't have an open container back home. Like, I don't do recruit training. I do an open open container fire zone split level. I do that for instructors every 3 years in some country where I'm, because it's not part of what I do. It's not one of the drills. I don't think I contribute to it. There's great examples of it. I'm not reinventing the wheel for no reason. So I can tell you, I can go on and try to make one. And I made a bad open container. Because I've never been, they used to have, fuel load was not, standard. It was just piles of stuff in there. So, but even if they were to make it standard for their standard, I wouldn't know how it reacts, because every fuel load is different. Moisture, whatever materials.
Tell me about it.
Yeah. So I'm going to go in there and try to do something, and I failed. And I always tell them before, like, this is what I will try to do, because I want to be open. I want to lower the guard.
What I'm hoping to achieve.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I sort of failed. It was a bad burn, but afterwards I go like, I would give myself a 4 out of 10. Like, nobody died. There was fire.
Nobody got burned.
People had fun.
Lars, I think there can be something out of that too. I mean, that's my experience. I'm going into totally new sites that have different vents, different lighting configurations, different fuel, 1,000 variables, amount of moisture, the temperature, the wind.
Yeah.
And so rarely do I go into one of those and get the first burn perfect.
Yeah.
But as long as at the end of the day we're sort of right, well, that didn't work very well. The fire didn't do it. Why did it develop?
Yeah. Right.
What do you guys reckon? What can we do different next time? Oh, build a different crib. Okay. How would you build the crib?
Yeah.
And and why do you think this happened? Oh, the board fell there. Okay, so what can we do next time? So it can be, even when you don't get 100%,
it's still learning.
Learning experience. I mean, if you've done 12 burns in that box and you can't do the 13th one right, then there's something wrong. But you're walking in stone cold to a dozen different variables. It's almost impossible to get it right first time. I'd love to be able to walk in. Same configuration.
You would have done it way better, because of no other reason. Even if you were a moron, you've done it a lot of times. Now you're not a moron, and you've done it a lot of times, so you would do it much better.
I think but it is hard on yourself.
I know, but I sat in your container, so I know you're good. But to me, it was sort of one of the most important things, and why I said I would do it still, even though I sort of know that I will not do a good job. I'll do this. And then there will be some learning of seeing what I did wrong. Sure, there's learning in that. But I said, I'm just going to do it because I'm going to show myself that I'm not afraid to show my insecurities and what I'm bad at, because I think that's a very important thing to convey, that I don't expect you to be, open with your insecurities. If I'm not going to be that.
Yeah.
And two, you're going to see that I'm not an oracle, which means that you will hopefully also challenge the other things I'm saying. Because I know I'm telling you I'm not an oracle. I'm telling you I've been wrong in the past. I just, I just think now that I know everything. But they still, because, you come from different countries, they've seen me on Facebook, and all of a sudden I'm a world expert. Like, no, I'm just Lars. I'm sitting here in my office, I've got to, take care of my kids.
Same with you, mate. I never take it all too seriously. I've done stuff. I'm a plotter. I've just been plotting for a long time. If that makes an expert, then I'm an expert. But I'm not exactly some sort of super
10,000
genius.
hours gets you, even if it gets you closer to being an expert at least.
That's right.
No, it is. But I think that's one of those. I just wanted that example. I was sitting in a container, and this happens a lot in different variations. I was sitting in a burn building, and I said everyone before, this is not a macho drill. If it gets too hot, go outside. This was experienced instructors, but I went to the spiel anyway. I went very close to saying, I was very careful saying that, I don't know, but I was sitting in one position. I thought that position was the hottest. I made an error. There was someone sitting just a meter beside me. And they probably had the convection current hitting the back wall coming down at them. And I didn't have that. So I made an error, and because in that case, I wanted to sit at the place that I thought was the hottest. Because I anticipated, I know that some people won't go out anyway, because they're waiting for me to make the call.
Yep.
Because they think I'm good, or they want to be seen as weak. There's so many variables, and regardless. Anyway, this person came out, melted gear. This was a couple of years ago, but it doesn't matter. He came out with melted gear, and I was going like, what did I do wrong? Because if I tell them, they would go like, oh, that was super hot. Yeah, it was hot, but for me, it wasn't hot. I was sitting a meter, because I made away. For me, it wasn't the problem at all.
That's a real trap, especially once you enter the ventilate. Once you start closing things down. The hottest part is the back with that convection current spilling around.
I didn't anticipate that, so I was wrong with that. But it's still, that was senior instructors coming to a different country. Those are the most interested, the most senior, and they still will think that you are some kind of oracle that should know that. Oh, he's got it figured.
Yeah, if I look weak, if I'm the only one bailing out, I'm going to look weak. But that's why I do it all the time. Exactly the same spiel. It's almost word for word what you said. Not a macho test. Blah blah blah. Feel uncomfortable. Come out. Well, I know they won't do it. And another reason that I'm really pedantic about coming out, doffing your gear, and rehabbing is for that reason. Because I had one many years ago. Guy, he's really heat stressed. How are you? Yeah, everything's good. And he went off and sat by himself and just eventually the lights went out and he fainted. He wasn't seriously injured, but I'm thinking if he'd fallen into a ditch or something like that.
A
lot of guys, they want to start making up the BAs, strangeness, everything. I don't care about that. Turn the main valve off over here. Sit down for 15 minutes. I'm going to look at you.
Yeah.
you say to everybody, "Are you all okay?" Yeah, but if somebody is a bit heat stressed, you can tell, can't you?
Yeah.
We're looking at them, they're going, "Yeah, I feel great," but you can tell we're looking at them, they're not. Then you can pay a little bit more attention to them, make sure they rehydrate. So that's the nature of the human being, and that's why we have to do these things and say it 1,000 times, because if you don't, there's no excuse.
I don't think you can say it 1,000 times. You just have to experience that some things will not work until you make them work. Meaning that, like, I can't tell you to not be macho. You will be macho anyway. It's not about being macho, and I'm trying very hard about creating a non-macho environment, because but it is that sense of I don't blame it as macho. I blame it as the natural. I don't think this feels good. But not necessarily that, I'm a pussy. I don't think this feels good. Maybe I'm wrong about my interpretation. Maybe it should feel like that. It's an insecurity about me being right or wrong.
So I think nobody else is running out.
Nobody else is running out.
It
must be that something is. It's just me interpreting the situation wrong. Maybe it's not as hard as it should be, and so on. Not about the other people are macho. They can take this pain. I'm gonna just suck it out. I think the first one is way more common, and it also, at least to me, I think much more harder, because it's the insecurity of, again, I'm trying to, as an instructor, trying to lower myself in their eyes to create a curiosity environment. We're gonna discover this together. I don't really know what's gonna happen. Let's discover it. So I have to lower myself knowledge-wise to create that kind of environment. But that also gives me, hopefully, the environment of people going like, I don't think it's a big problem of me asking a question. Should it really feels like that? My BA is just...
starting to burn,
is this normal?
I think one of the things I tried to do too with the briefing is highlight the effects of viruses and bacteria.
Yeah.
And I think the thing is that if you get the flu today, you probably felt off the day before.
Yeah,
I call that pre-viral period, and I'd say the toughest, strongest triathlete, whatever else in the world, heat condition, will go down like a kid.
Yeah,
if he's pre-viral, pre-bacterial, or post-viral as well. So this little thing that a couple of microns in size can take down the biggest man. So it can happen to anybody.
We did that was actually one of the good training drills we did at my station when I was a firefighter. We had every month we did an obstacle course inside the station. No fire, just inside the station with the BA, and we wrote down same obstacle course every time. So we wrote down how much air we consumed and how long we could walk in time and distance. And one of the fun things is if you look at that, so you can instantly see if you had a bad day. Like if you were actually a bit of catching cold, or you were a little bit sniffles and stuff like that, because you can instantly saw it in your air consumption and stuff like that. You can see it. So that was sort of a cool drill to make, because you really learn those variables. Some of these you can't control. So we did that. Now we changed that to be more. By the end, before I quit, we changed it to be more. It was all about physical fitness, because it was built by the physical fitness guys. So it's lifting things and doing things. I changed it to actually, you have to connect the hose line here. You have to, change a blade on a saw here. It was a lot of practice, because we were losing those. We were losing a lot of, drill things. Just take a ladder, raise it up against the wall, take a ladder. It was still physical things, but we were doing, skills training.
Balanced.
So we left that. And we had that once every month, or maybe every 5 weeks, it was. So again, I developed my own understanding of, and like you said, there's many variables which you don't control, and sometimes you have no idea about them.
It's phenomenal.
You can see that.
It's phenomenal.
I am 15% below my normal distance I could walk. Like, what's happening here? Yeah. I have an elevated heart rate because of some kind of physical condition. So it was very useful, and everybody can do that. So that was a good training drill we did, but didn't cost anything besides time for full time, which is usually not a problem unless you're in an extremely busy station. Shan, I need to go. I have things to do. I could talk for 2 hours more. We haven't really got into a lot of details. We have to do some other time. But you could discuss door control, and we can discuss the gas cooling in detail and so on. But I love this discussion of bus but being a lot of it. The discussion ended up being like, how do you not be crazy as an instructor, and also how do you be a better instructor? I think that was a great
Challenge
discussion.
Yourself. It's about challenging yourself, isn't it?
Yeah.
You've always got to be constantly challenging yourself, even though your motivations may be right. And I think probably more people need to do that. If you're looking for excellence, you want to keep improving, don't you? And if you're making mistakes, that everyone you benefit if you're able to have them pointed out correct.
Yeah. No, it is, and but it's hard. I usually
like I said, it's a big responsibility too. Once you start to get known, whether you're good or you're not good, you've got a massive responsibility to get it right, because people are listening to you, people are following you.
So how long do you think you will keep going? Now because you're retired from Queensland. Now you're happy retiree. You're going around teaching some. How long do you think you're gonna? Now, given that people are interested and people want to learn, how long do you think you're gonna keep up the steam in terms of passion? Let's say you're healthy, for instance.
Well, that's another issue as well. But touch wood, so far everything's good there. But look, I've got a 3-year plan. I don't see myself as shipping containers in 3 years' time. So I'm developing some people to pass the baton on to. What I see myself doing, maybe if I'm still enjoying it and I'm still physically able, in 3 or 4 years' time, maybe opening a course, maybe delivering a bit of theory, maybe doing some assessments. So basically, still facilitating people. But doing more from the back and just doing quality control, getting a good group of instructors together and support them and keep the message going through quality controls.
Yeah. So you want to at least get your hand in the dirt.
I'm still enjoying it. The travel gets a little bit overwhelming at times. That was getting to me before I retired. And this year's been a bit hectic. So I need to pace my travel a bit, because that starts to wear thin. Especially when your bags get lost or you're held up at the airport.
This is horrible.
As it's common these days with travel. But no, look, I'm still enjoying it. I'm still passionate about it. And sometimes I ask myself, am I still relevant? and then I get in the class and I've been in there for 2 or 3 hours and eyes are lighting up, jaws are dropping, people are surprised. I think I must be still relevant. I'm still surprising people. They're still shocked. They're still asking questions. So whenever I'm getting that response, I'll keep going. But people say, I've heard that. I know that. And I've probably lost my relevance then.
Well, I mean, I asked myself the same question. It's like, am I relevant? Doesn't everybody know this? But of course, there's always, I go like, well, there's always a recruit that hasn't heard anything. They might still want to know. But it's, I guess it is, when you stop being passionate, you will stop being relevant. As long as you stay passionate, you will be relevant. You will not everybody could maybe learn the same knowledge, read the same reports, but to put it into to the context of the modern environment with all the cultures and things happening, and to give your spin on how it fits together in the modern world about what's happening. I guess that's always relevant, but you need to be passionate to stay on that ball. We'll see. I don't know if when I'm in retiree age, if I'm still going, I don't know. Who knows? Maybe I've switched to a different business. I constantly ponder upon, should I stay in fire or should I do something else? I'm very curious about other things too.
And that's the thing, is if it's something that you're passionate about, it's not work, is it? And I'm still passionate about this. I can't play golf. I got 2 left hands, so I can't play tennis. Lawn bowls doesn't turn me on, so I'm still stuck with firefighting at the moment. So
we're very happy that you are, Shan. We're very happy that you are. You've been a huge contributor to the world, of course, as you know. Now again, that's just one part of it. Just to stay relevant, it takes a lot of work to do.
That's a continual challenge, because you can never stand still. Even if by miracle today I was the font of all knowledge, I knew everything and I could portray it perfectly. Well, if I don't keep up in a year's time, I'm getting left behind. So, and you're never going to achieve the perfection anyway. So you're always playing catch up, but you've always got to keep staying on the leading edge. Otherwise, you just get left behind so quickly.
Well, like I said, I'm glad you're still passionate, Shan. I hope you meet up in someday in physical life too. It was just far too long.
Well, mate, it's been great talking with you. I really appreciate it. I'm following your post. I saw that one about heat release rate. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. Great discussion. So you're doing some fantastic work. And what I've always admired about your instruction style, it's really designed to get people thinking, not telling, drawing out, getting people to discover. It's really the way people learn, and that's the way to remember. So you're a real inspiration for that style of teaching. It's very, very important. Getting up at university, listening to somebody 45 minutes, boring hours, but what you're doing is great, mate. You're a great example of that active instructor.
I take that price very to my heart. It feels very good, Shan. If it comes across that, because that's what at least I'm trying to do.
It's there. It's very strong. It's very evident.
I wish you the best day.
Thank you very much, mate.
Yeah,
nice talk.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.